Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we have a special treat. We have Mr. Byron RIcks. He has been our founding board president and longtime supporter. So we have him on today, not so much to talk about his work with Legacy, but to sort of explore some of the things that he's doing outside of Legacy. So Mr. RIcks, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we start?
Well, yes, hi. Thank you for inviting me, Dr. Good. Well, where do I start? I am presently the president of RIcks Creative Consulting Group. We do digital marketing. Before that, I owned a Comfort Keeper franchise for over 7 years and worked at the senior community. My graduate degree is in human behavior. I worked at higher education, Director of Administrative Services, and I ran 6 campuses in Southern California. I have was a professional speaker, worked with Zig Ziglar and Ziglar Training Corporation and Brian Tracy and a lot of the big guys. And I've been to all 50 states of the United States. I've spoken to Fortune 500 companies doing speaking and training. And today, as you know, you and I have worked together for about 7 years with the Legacy children.
And talk a little bit about your growing up years.
Well, I grew up in Chicago, mainly the west side of Chicago, and I was a latchkey kid, single parent, welfare recipient, and gang-infested neighborhoods, and it was just not an easy life.
And what did that lead to for you?
Well, it's interesting that a lot of young people don't know what they want, and I can't say that I knew what I wanted, but I knew what I didn't want. I was always driven by what I didn't want to do, i.e., I didn't want to be in a gang. I didn't want to be on drugs. I didn't want to, be stealing cars. I mean, I didn't want to do the activities that a lot of people in the environment that I grew up in was doing. So I did other things, and those other things then took me into reading. I used to love to read, and I'm an avid reader. My mother was an avid reader, and I went to Catholic schools, and so because of that sheltered me a little bit from that environment, because the Catholic schools and the nuns within those schools kept us busy.
So your growing up years led to you writing a book. What motivated you to actually put that in a book?
Well, when I was in the speaking circuit, I was working on a book, and I was talking to Zig Ziglar once and asking him would he endorse the book, and it was called Attitude of Resilience. He referred me to a publisher, and I took the manuscript to the publisher, and the publisher read it and said, it's not really, anything we haven't seen before. It's not a big deal. We don't really not excited about this project. And I paid her $100 for that advice, by the way. And after that, she said, but we do want to work with you. Bring us a different manuscript, and we'd be happy to work with you. And I thought about that, and I had been thinking about this book, Searching for Dad, though I didn't have a name for it at the time. And I told her about it. I pitched it, and she said, oh, I like that. Bring me that manuscript. And I said, okay. And I went out.
Like it was written, but it really wasn't written yet?
Exactly. But here's the thing. I went out to write it, but what I realized is all of the book could not have come from me in my personal experiences. And because I was on the road, I would begin to talk with people that I met in my seminars, at dinner, wherever I met them on a plane and airports, and I would talk about this subject of growing up without a father, and everyone I spoke to had some experience, whether it was them, whether it was someone in their family, and I began to make note. I had a yellow pad. I began to take notes, and I came up with those 7 or 9, side effects of growing up fatherless from my conversations with people on the road. And I went back to the publisher 5 years later.
They waited for you.
Well, you know what's funny? They looked at me and they looked back at their notes, in my history, and they said, "Well, when we asked you to come back, we thought you'd be 3 months, maybe 6 months, not 5 years."
So, talk a little bit about your 9 steps, especially around how fathers can begin to reconnect with their sons, even if they're not now men.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the 9 side effects, and I say 9 because the book has 9, but it could be 10, it could be 8. It just depends on individual experiences that you've had growing up. And this book is about boys growing up without fathers because I was a boy. But since I've been working in the field, I realized that girls grow up without fathers, and they have a lot of the same challenges as boys. So when we talk about children now that grew up without fathers, more so than boys, and the 9 side effects, one that was prevalent was identity crisis. I remember when I was growing up, I would look in the mirror, and I was not looking for characteristics of my mother. I was looking for characteristics of my father. But I didn't have a father. I didn't even have a picture of a father at that time, and I just didn't know who I was. And then when I talked to young men, and grown men even, they shared that sentiment about that identity crisis. Who am I really? I don't know the entire essence of who I am. I know my mother's people. I don't know my father's people. So that was one of the side effects that we talked about. Understanding our own value is one. I was listening to a minister's talk once, and he read a statistic about airplane crashes. And before the airplane crash, he said that people grab their suitcases. One of the problems is that people grab their suitcases and they try to get out of the plane, and you have all these dead bodies in suitcases there because people can't get out. And I thought, wow, if my father was on this plane, he'd grab his suitcase, but I wasn't valuable enough for him to grab. That was a kid putting, logic together, if you will. And so my conversation with these young men and these boys in my workshops, there are a lot of them that do not appreciate their own value because they had no one to show them or tell them that. Now, moms did great jobs, but moms are not fathers as fathers are not moms.
It's true.
Okay.
So what do you see as the difference between being male and being a man?
Well, you are born a male. Okay, there may be some, debate, but for the most part, you're born a man. You're born male. I remember when my wife was with a child, with my son, and I was dead set on it was going to be a boy. And the doctor said, "Well, Byron, it might not be." And he brought me in. He said it might not be. So when my son was born, he didn't want to tell me what it was. He said, "Mr. Ricks, you come look." And so naturally, what I'm looking for? I'm looking for male. And I saw male. But because he was born male, that doesn't make you a man. Because a man is a person that has gone through some experiences. A man is a person that has learned from those experiences. And a man doesn't do the same things that boys do. They make better decisions than boys make because they are indeed men. My son, for instance, called me one morning, and it was funny. I was writing the book, and he said, "Well, Dad, my girlfriend is pregnant." They weren't married. And I flipped because I knew he knew better. I had taught him better. But yet here we are. And I thought, well, I can't write this book because people are going to judge me by how my son is. And so I put the book on hold. Another reason it took a while to get it done. But today my son is married to his wife, been married over 10 years. They have 3 beautiful children. And he has stepped up to the plate, and he's done man things. So you're born male, but you're a man based on decisions you make, how you treat women, how you treat people, the responsibilities that you take upon yourself. and how you conduct yourself in our society.
So how can boys whose trust was, broken by their fathers as children, learn to regain trust again?
That is a great question, Dr. Good. I've been asked that question more times than I can remember.
Well, then I know you have a great answer then, right?
Well, I don't.
No.
No, I know. Let me say this. I wish I had the answer, but I don't have the answer. I have some ideas, I know for me, when I look back, and I talk about it in the book, some role models, if you will, that I had, some men that I mimicked myself after. One was my Uncle Rufus. So is there an uncle? Is there an older brother? Is there another male? Is there a mentor from school? Is there a school coach? Is there some program by which you can put him into that allows him to interact with a man that make manly decisions? I noticed even in school, and you probably can attest to this, boys that have male teachers tend to be more well behaved with the male teacher than they do the female teacher. Is that your experience?
So that would depend on how the male teacher and the female teacher, how they go about building a relationship with kids.
Okay.
And so especially some of our kids, let's say in some of the areas of town where it's a higher percentage of low socioeconomic,
right,
a higher percentage of kids without fathers in the home, if we properly train, and we work hard to do this, our teachers to build a relationship with our kids, then they will get the behavior back that we need from them. What I will say, that it could be that they will get, the kids might behave the same in both classes, but the males might get a different type of respect, a wish and a wanting that male teacher was their father, because they're looking for male role models.
They are. I just remember when I was a kid, my friends and I, classmates and I, knew that we couldn't get away with certain things with Mr. Rittenberg or Mr. Reamer that we could with, the female teachers. Maybe that was just us, but I just felt like we knew that this not going to fly with him. And it wouldn't fly with her, but we could try her, and we may get 1 or 2 or 3 strikes, and at that point, she put the hammer down. But with him, we knew that the first time that was going to be it.
And they probably respected him a lot.
We did. We respected him a lot. So I guess to answer your question, I don't have a definitive answer, but one of the things I can say to mothers, I need you all to acknowledge that your son is growing up without fathers, and respect that need, because that then enables you to begin to look for areas, solutions, programs, mentors for them. But what I got often, and I talk about this in the book as well, I've heard so many women say, he doesn't need a dad. I can be his dad. And I'm talking about women who that come from means, or they make good money. So they are thinking of, I can take care of him. I had one mother say, I can buy him anything his dad could buy him. In fact, I make more money than his dad. Yes, but you're not his dad. So you're missing that piece. And so a boy needs a man to teach him manly ways. Think about it this way. A person that cannot swim cannot teach you how to swim.
That's true. So would you be advising mothers to actively try to find somebody within their church or the school, a male that they themselves respect and think would be a good role model for their child, to take some interest in their child? Yes,
I think number one, if at all possible for you to allow that child to interact with its own father, then that would be best.
That's best case.
Best case. However, if that child is that father is not in a position to do that, not in the same city, or maybe they have a lifestyle that you don't want, to have your child exposed to or some kind of dangerous situation. I don't want you to ever do that. But yeah, then next is there. How about your brother? How about your uncle? How about your dad? How about, again, the mentor in the church? How about well, back in the day they would say Boy Scouts or something. But how about
We still have Boy Scouts.
Yeah. Well, yes, you do. So something like that to help help him develop. And it's important, though, that you put him with a man that has character.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Not just any man, a man that has character. That he can see demonstrate what character is, how it looks. Like, character's not just a person in a play or a movie, but it's a behavior. It's how he interacts with women, with girls, how he interacts and responds when he gets angry. I mean, showing him some manly ways to respond opposed to adolescent ways to respond.
That might take a little bit of a search.
It might these days, well, because we live in a different society today.
So what do you mean in the book when you say that anger causes our hearts to hijack our minds?
Well, I used to teach a course called Emotional Intelligence, and it came from, the book Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. Mm-hmm. And what he talks about in the book is the heart is faster than the head. The heart is faster than the mind. And so what happens is when we become angry, our heart responds before our mind does. And when we get angry, we know that the blood leaves the brain. It is not circulating properly in the brain. So we become irrational. And we say things that we regret, and we do things that we regret. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be able to identify those anger triggers such that we can intellectually control them, such that our brain, our mind, is not hijacked by our emotions, our heart.
And when you say that, you're speaking to the moms, you're speaking to the young men. Who are you speaking to?
I'm speaking to the moms. I'm speaking to the young men, both. My mom would get angry with my father, and my father came to see me, and she got upset, and she was upset with him. I was stoked to see my dad, and he picked me up, and I felt great. But because she was angry with my dad, she made him put me down. She made me come in the house. She would not allow me to interact with him. That impacted me. I couldn't stand that, okay? But then when I got a little older and I was wanting to interact with my dad, he said some things that bothered me. Now, in retrospect, he was a man who didn't really have a relationship with me, and he really just spoke what was on his mind. Instead of me processing that like an adult, like a man, I got hurt by it. And then in my anger, I said things that I shouldn't have said. Well, all that did was widen the gap between us. Had I responded differently, I believe that I might have been able to close that gap.
Did you eventually close that gap later?
I never closed that gap. Unfortunately, my father passed away, and we never reconciled.
And so that's good advice.
Right.
So what's the relationship between respect and violence?
The relationship between respect and violence, well, in the neighborhoods that I grew up in, respect wasn't, how can I say this? There was a misunderstanding in my mind of what respect was or what it looked like. For instance, I remember being outside with a bunch of guys, and I was maybe 12 or 13, maybe, I don't even think I was a teenager. I knew I wasn't a teenager, but I was out with some older boys, and then they were pitching pennies. Now, if you grew up in the city, you know what that is, and they were pitching pennies on the sidewalk, and the guy set his drink on the ground. And so another kid was out there, and they were horsing around, and he kicked his drink and spilled it. And the guy jumped on the kid and beat him up, and he said, "I dare you disrespect me." And you say, well, that wasn't disrespect. That was an accident. That was a mistake. You know, he took no responsibility for putting the soda on the ground, but somehow he said, "I dare you kick my drink because that was mine. You, in my space, you disrespected me." And I seen a lot of that, and I see a lot of that today.
You do. I was going to say that. Unfortunately, that hasn't changed.
Right.
So that's something that we continue to work on. We've talked a lot about what's in the book, but you're actually actively working on changing the lives of young men. How are you doing that?
You know, the book was written in actually 2008, I believe. And I went on the speaking circuit there, and I put together different seminars for young men and older men, grown men, adults. And I did a lot of training in that area. And last year, I got called by one church in Plano, but they have a Louisville campus, and they said, "Look, Byron, we have a new ministry. It's called the 180 Ministry, and we have some young men, boys and men from 5 to 15 that's growing up without their dads. Their parents are members of our church. We put together a program last year, and it was a good program, but we didn't get what we wanted from it. We read your book. We've met with you. We was wondering if you would work with us on that." And so I said, absolutely. I jumped at the chance to do that. But the book was written for 15 and over, really. And so I had to sit down and say, okay, I got to write from 5 to 15 and develop some curriculum for them, which I did. And then we would go in and do a training of mentors, because I didn't do all the training. What I would do was create the curriculum, and then we train the mentors who would then indeed have the classes with the boys. And so that was a successful program. We have about a dozen or so, 12 to 15 young men that went through that program, and I think some which you're going to hear today. And we taught them about identity crisis. We were able to ask them about it, talk to them about it, and you could just see light bulbs go off because no one has ever had this conversation with them before. We talked about silent anger. You know, a lot of young boys, even young girls, they are angry, but they don't know what they're really angry for or angry about. But when you begin to have these conversations with them, they're like, yeah, I'm upset because my dad's not here. I'm upset because he's married over here and he takes care of these kids. He don't take care of me. So they begin to talk and let it out, and then that enables you to work with them, and I help them identify it. But one thing they said to me, Byron, we don't want you to just identify the side effects. We want you to talk about and work with them and us on how to overcome them. Okay. So what I did learn is that in the book is Searching for Dad, 9 Side Effects of Growing Up Fatherless, and long title, How to Overcome Them. Well, so I put together a lesson plan on identifying the side effect, and then I put together lesson plans on how we overcome them. Some of the ways we overcome them were biblically based, others were not biblically based. You know, they were common sense type things that you do.
Social emotional
intelligence. Thank you.
So let's listen. I think Micah is our first one. So let's hear Micah and him talk about the impact that your program had on him.
Okay.
What I've learned about character that has helped me be a better young man is that character isn't just somebody in a movie part or how they act. It's the way you act in real life. It's the way you react to somebody when they do something mean. Like for an example, at school a year ago, I got in trouble for being disrespectful to a teacher, and I had a very rude grammar, so I had to go to the principal's office. But from that day on, I learned my lesson that It's okay to get used to something and go back to different changes, because one of the main things people struggle with in that is switching to changes when somebody else is different. So I've learned that it's okay to act different ways when somebody else is here and when they change up the rules. This is life-changing for a lot of boys like me who had a father but something happened.
Micah, that young man is amazing. If you listen to what he said, and remember, we talked about character. We did 3 lessons, I believe, on character, and one of the things he talked about was how he behaved. Remember, we talked about man versus male earlier, and he talked about being angry earlier in school and how he behaved. And then when faced with another situation, he behaved differently.
Because of your training.
Because of our training. Because of he now understands what character is, and not just what it is, what it looks like.
And it caused him to change his behavior in a more positive way.
Yes, ma'am.
And he's able to verbalize it.
Able to verbalize it.
That's huge.
Yes.
All right, so let's listen to our next young man, Xavier.
In 180, I learned about identity crisis and how identity crisis means that a person is lost in their self, or if they don't know what their identity is, then they would start to do bad stuff. I learned where to find my identity by going to my mentors and praying and reaching out to God.
Okay, so, and then we have our last young man, who is Andrew.
Andrew, and I've been at 180 for 1 year. Yeah, most people think value as in money, but value actually means money, but way past that. Like, value is love. Love is more than money. Most people think that money gives you love, but no. Love, it's its own thing. And value, God loves or values you more than anything else in the world. It doesn't matter what it is. He just loves you. And he can love everybody in this whole entire world more than anything.
So how did you change Andrew?
Well, again, we talked about value, and we have to teach Andrew that, and the boys, about value. They knew about the value of money. You heard him say value is not just money. Value is me. I'm valuable. And we believe, because again, this is a church, so we have to focus them on a higher power. And we have to teach them that God loves you, God values you, and let me show you why he values you. And then we go through those value systems that God has put in place, and such that he can recognize his own value, and that love, that God loves you, and that and he goes on, this is a short clip, but he talks about the value that he knows his mother has for him, and his friends and relatives have for him. He now knows that he is a valuable person, and it's not just money.
So, because we're running out of time, unfortunately, your work continues with these children and this program. How can people contact you if they want to bring something like this to their organization?
They can go to RIcks creativeconsulting.com, rickscreativeconsulting.com, and drop me an email.
Okay, and if you'll send me a link, maybe we can put it in the posting.
Okay.
And that way people can also click on that.
And click on that link and say, I heard the podcast, I want more information.
That's right.
And we can go from there.
Yes, we need to spread the word on this. We have, unfortunately, young men who need this kind of touch.
Yes.
So, well, we thank you. We're already at the end of our show, we always say that in our podcast world, 30 minutes equals 5 minutes. That's what it feels like. And I know that sometimes we have time to have the guest ask me a question, but we've run out of time. So maybe next time we hope to have you back and let us know what else is going on in your world that we can, that can help change ours.
Okay, thank you for the invitation.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ask Dr. Be Good show. For more information on Legacy Preparatory Charter Schools, visit our website, legacypca.com, or call 469-249-1099. And remember to like us on Facebook, where we stream live weekly Tuesdays at 3 p.m.